The special segment this week, Stephen, well, the NHL trade deadline, we're recording this podcast Tuesday morning, so we're 3 days away from the deadline. We're about 74 and a half hours away from the trade deadline. So obviously there are fantasy implications when that happens. So we want to highlight a few names that are important to watch because their values could fluctuate depending on what happens. So let's get to it.
All right, and it's funny. A bunch of these names are names we've seen in the trade rumor mill for a few years now. Some of them have been traded, some of them haven't. But we'll start with one guy who has bounced around a little bit, and that is Max Pacioretty.
Yes, Max Pacioretty of the Washington Capitals. To me, he's a pretty low-risk buy relative to his price tag now. In real life, obviously major injury risk, but his cap hit's $2 million. And if a team retains on that, or if Washington retains, you could get him for $1 million. And the potential upside there is still pretty big. He has 7 points in his last 8 games with 19 shots, and that's in just 14 minutes a night. So extremely efficient. To me, that tells us he can still play. And if he lands in the right situation, I think a team could add him to their top 6. You never know. Like, imagine a scenario in which a team like Edmonton, let's say they strike out on Buchnevich, so they kick the tires on a $1 million Max Pacioretty. What happens then to his value, right? So this is someone you want to watch carefully just based on how much life he's shown lately. And I think he could get a nice boost in value if he goes to a high octane team.
All right, I like that one. Next one up, Vladimir Tarasenko. We did see him traded last year. He's playing in Ottawa now. What's next?
Yeah, I do think we will see him traded. He does have a full no trade clause, but I think he can still control his destiny if he wants to make a run at a cup. And as it stands right now with the market, we know there are some marquee wingers available. You got Jake Gensel, Pavel Buchnevich, and now maybe Tyler Toffoli. But in the next tier down, I mentioned Pacioretty. Also, Tarasenko is someone that I expect to change teams, and I expect to go to a cup contender. So most scenarios, based on the environment he's been in Ottawa, which is being ho-hum, I think we're going to see a boost in his value, especially, let's say, if he goes to a team like Colorado. I mentioned Edmonton. Even if he goes back to New York, he's going to land with some better line mates. So I think we could see a small boost in his value depending on where he goes.
Okay. You mentioned the next guy, Pavel Buchnevich. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, this one excites me because even on some middling St. Louis Blues teams, Buchnevich has been roughly a point per game player over the last few seasons. And now we know some powerhouse teams are sniffing around him. So I'm just picturing him. We know that the Edmonton Oilers have been scouting him. Imagine he goes there. He's already a point per game player with Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas. But what if he's out there with McDavid? That's someone who could go off. There could be a stratospheric, truly league-winning situation here if you get Buchnevich traded to a team like Edmonton or Colorado, or whatever it's going to be. So to me, he's an extremely important name to watch. Obviously, Jake Gensel is too. We'll get to him a bit later in the show, but Buchnevich, you got to pay close attention to where he's going.
So a few of these players, though, sound familiar. Like, I think I've read articles about some of these guys on some trade destinations. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Oh, yes, that's right. You can go to dailyfaceoff.com and click the trade deadline tab in the top right corner of the homepage, and you can find stories on these guys and potential destinations, trade targets board, all that good stuff.
All right, awesome. Next up, Jacob Markstrom. Obviously, the goalie market is quite interesting right now. There's an argument to be made, and I'd be making it, to hold on to him. You don't need to trade him right now. But if he is, especially to certain teams like New Jersey, that's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting for Markstrom because he's an example of his value could go up or down depending on what happens, right? So the Flames have been playing decent hockey, maybe overachieving a little bit, but they're also a candidate to keep sending out more pieces. Maybe Noah Hanifin is removed from the equation in the next few days and their defense gets worse, which means a worse environment for Markstrom if he stays. He could get traded to the New Jersey Devils. Of course, that's the team that's been pursuing him hard and almost landed him in a trade, which was reportedly blocked by ownership in New Jersey or in Calgary, I should say. So it's tough. And the other scenario to think about with Jacob Markstrom is the Devils have not been looking so good lately. Are we sure that they're an upgrade in fantasy environment? I would have a few weeks ago said absolutely, that would be incredible. But now it's like, geez, if he gets traded to the Devils, they're not playing that well. It might not actually change his fantasy value. I think it would be more changing his value for next year. So it's more, I'd say I'm marking down Markstrom here for keeper leagues, because if he gets traded, he still has term left on his deal. So it could change his outlook for next season. And that's why you want to be paying attention to what happens.
I think he'd help the Devils because the new coach bump, even though I don't trust Travis Green, given his track record. But then you look at, in a lot of cases, just slightly better goaltending would have put this team in a much better position. The issue is, I feel like if they were going to make a goalie trade, it had to have been a few weeks ago now. At this
Yes.
point, they're going to be playing too much catch up, way too late. That's the thing with the trade deadline. It almost feels like it's too late in the season.
Mhm.
But when you look at other leagues like NBA is much earlier, I feel like maybe that'd almost be the way to do it. But anyways, next up, Adam Henrique out of Anaheim. Obviously, not a lot of great centermen available on this year's block, but he is one of the names that people are looking at.
That's right. So in real life, Adam Henrique, I think, is going to be a nice acquisition. He's a really smart player. He can kill penalties. He can be in your middle six. He can play center or the wing. But from a fantasy perspective, it's kind of I'm sounding an alarm because whatever happens to Adam Henrique, it's going to hurt him. I don't see any scenario in which his fantasy value gets better or even stays the same. Based on the teams that are after him, it's a good team getting him. He's currently on the Ducks, so he's playing top line minutes, power play, all that fun stuff as a Duck. He gets traded to a team like the New York Rangers. He's dropping down in the lineup. He's third line center. He's power play too. And I think almost any team that's looking for Adam Henrique is going to play him in a much reduced role. If you're a team trying to trade for Adam Henrique to play on the first line, then don't do it because I don't think you're making the playoffs if that's your team construction, right? So that's the catch-22. So to me, I'm very concerned. If you're an Adam Henrique owner, I would try to trade him in the next couple days. Oh, what's that? I'm told I am an Adam Henrique owner in my own league, so I should probably try and ship him out. Maybe pause the podcast and start making some offers because I just picked him up on free agency a few weeks ago, but I'm like, oh, geez, I better trade him because I just see no scenario in which his fantasy value stays what it is right now.